I never imagined I'd find myself sitting on a plane, staring through the window while the seat next to me, reserved for my wife of 11 years, remained empty. It wasn't because of a delayed flight or a missed connection. The truth was much simpler and much harder to accept. She had chosen to be somewhere else with someone else. And not just any man. The person she chose was someone she had always described as nothing more than a coworker. For years I had heard that explanation, repeated so casually that I eventually stopped questioning it. But the irony was that the seat beside me didn't stay empty for very long. Just 3 days before that flight, I truly believed I was doing everything possible to save my marriage. Our 11th wedding anniversary was approaching, and I had spent weeks putting together a surprise I hoped she would never forget. I planned an entire week in Maui. Not just a simple vacation but something special, an ocean view suite, a sunset cruise along the coast, a couple's massage at the resort spa. Every detail was carefully arranged. I even made sure the hotel would place her favorite bottle of wine in the room before we arrived. But the trip wasn't about luxury or showing off. It was my attempt to bring us back to each other. Things between us had grown cold over the past months. Conversations had become short and distant, and there were long stretches of silence where warmth used to be. When I asked what was wrong, she blamed stress from work. I told myself maybe I hadn't been attentive enough, maybe I had let routine take over. Still, I wasn't ready to give up on us. In my mind, this trip was more than an anniversary celebration. It was a last chance to remind us both of what we once had. The evening before our flight, we had planned to meet for dinner. I thought it would be a quiet start to the trip, just the two of us before we left the next morning. But a few hours before we were supposed to meet, she called and cancelled. Her voice sounded distant. She said she wasn't feeling well and needed some time alone. According to her, it had been a stressful week, and she wanted to rest and clear her mind before traveling. She even mentioned needing space to reconnect with herself. I didn't argue. Part of me assumed she might just be anxious about the trip. We hadn't taken a vacation together in quite a while, and things between us had been tense lately. So I let it go. Later that night, though, something caught my attention. While scrolling through social media, I saw a story posted by one of her coworkers, Eric. He was a guy I had never felt comfortable around, though I could never quite explain why. The video showed a rooftop bar downtown. There were glasses of champagne clinking together, music playing in the background, city lights glowing behind them. And then I saw her. My wife stood right there in the middle of the frame, dressed up, smiling and laughing in a way I hadn't seen in months. She looked carefree, almost radiant, but what struck me the most wasn't just that she was there, it was how close she was standing to him. Under the soft glow of the hanging lights, her hand rested against his chest while his arm circled her waist. Meanwhile, I was sitting alone at home with 2 packed suitcases and our boarding passes waiting on the table. I stayed on the couch long after the video ended, staring at my phone as if watching it again might somehow change what I had just seen. But the more I replayed it in my mind, the clearer everything became. She hadn't cancelled dinner because she felt sick. She hadn't needed time alone to reconnect with herself. She cancelled because she had other plans that clearly didn't involve me. The evidence was right there on the screen. The rooftop bar, the laughter, the way she leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. Meanwhile, I was sitting at home surrounded by luggage packed for a trip that suddenly felt meaningless. For a few minutes, I just sat there in silence, letting the reality settle in. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. And I didn't send her an angry message. Instead, I stood up, walked into the kitchen and poured myself a drink. The house was quiet except for the sound of ice clinking in the glass. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not rage, not heartbreak. Clarity. And with that clarity came a decision. With the glass still in my hand, I picked up my phone and opened a new message thread. For a moment I stared at the empty screen, knowing that what I was about to do would change everything. Then I typed a name. Lily. My wife's younger sister. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, there's something important to understand. Lily had always been different from her sister. She was warm, straightforward, and refreshingly honest. While my wife often kept people at arm's length, Lily had a way of making everyone feel at ease. Over the years, we had spent time together at family gatherings, holidays, and birthdays. And somewhere in those moments, there had always been a quiet tension between us, something neither of us ever acknowledged out loud. Not because we wanted to cross a line, but because we both respected the obvious boundary between us. Still, the connection had always been there. That night, though, I wasn't thinking about breaking rules or getting revenge. I was simply thinking clearly for the first time in a long while. So I sent the message. I told her I had 2 tickets to Maui for the next morning, and that the person who was supposed to come with me couldn't make it anymore. Then I asked if she would want to take the trip instead. When I hit send, I set the phone down on the table and waited. For a moment, nothing happened. My phone lay on the table while the screen stayed dark, and I wondered if sending that message had been a mistake. Maybe it was too sudden. Maybe she would think I had lost my mind. Then the screen lit up. 3 small dots appeared, disappeared, and then appeared again. She was typing, then stopping, then typing again. Finally, her reply came through. "Are you serious?" I looked at the message for a second before answering. My fingers moved across the screen slowly, but the words came out exactly how I felt. As serious as someone who just realized his marriage might already be over. A minute passed before another message arrived. "Give me 10 minutes to pack." That was it, no long discussion, no hesitation, just 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, I grabbed my keys, got into my car and drove across town to pick her up. For the first time all night, I didn't feel stuck or uncertain. Something had started moving forward. Early the next morning, we arrived at the airport together. Everything felt strangely calm, almost unreal, like events were moving too quickly for me to fully process them. We checked in, passed through security, and eventually found our gate. Neither of us talked much during that time, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt more like both of us understood that something unusual was happening, and we were letting it unfold without forcing explanations. When boarding began, we walked down the narrow aisle of the plane until I found our row. I glanced at the tickets in my hand and stopped beside the seats. One of them had originally been reserved for my wife. Instead, Lily slipped into the seat next to mine. She pushed her sunglasses up onto her head and leaned back comfortably, as if she belonged there. Her hair was tied loosely, and there was a quiet confidence about her that I hadn't seen in my wife for a very long time. She turned her head and looked at me with a small smile. "You doing okay?" she asked. I thought about the question for a second. Everything that had happened over the past day could have left me angry, bitter, or lost. But sitting there, with the engines beginning to rumble and someone beside me who had actually shown up, the answer felt simple. "I am now," I said honestly. As the plane lifted into the sky, I kept my eyes forward. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder what my wife might be doing or whether she had realized what she had thrown away. All that mattered in that moment was that the seat beside me was no longer empty. We touched down in Maui just as the sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The warm island air wrapped around us like a welcome hug, soft and forgiving, and for the first time in months, I felt the tension that had clung to me finally ease. Lily stretched her arms and tilted her face toward the sunlight, letting out a soft, carefree laugh that seemed to echo the relief I felt inside. For weeks, maybe months, I had been tiptoeing around my wife, trying not to upset her, trying to revive something that was already fading. But now, beside Lily, the air felt different. Light, real, free. Even with the memory of betrayal still fresh in my chest, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt like a man standing at the start of something new, a chance to breathe without the weight of someone else's choices pressing down on me. As we drove from the airport toward the resort, the car was quiet, but it wasn't awkward. Lily rested her head against the window, and occasionally her fingers brushed mine over the center console. Small, simple touches, but they carried a reassurance I hadn't felt in years. I noticed things I hadn't before, how present she was, how she wasn't constantly scrolling through her phone, how she didn't sigh into silence. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was fully present too. When we arrived at the resort, I was struck by how beautiful it was, far more stunning than I had pictured in my mind. Towering palm trees lined the curved driveway, and the main lobby opened directly to a view of the endless ocean beyond. The scent of salt and tropical blooms filled the air, a reminder that we were far from the chaos of everyday life. The concierge handed me our room keys, and I felt a flicker of hesitation. I had reserved a single king bed before any of this unfolded, unsure how to navigate the awkwardness of the situation. Before I could say anything, Lily slipped her key card into her purse and gave me a calm, reassuring smile. "Don't overthink it," she said. "I trust you, I just needed a break from reality too." She paused, looking out at the ocean for a moment, then added with a playful grin, "And let's be honest, this reality is a lot better than the one we left behind." Her words were easy, natural, and carried no hidden agenda. For the first time since the flight, I felt a sense of ease. The tension that had been knotting my shoulders for months finally started to unwind. Inside the suite, she collapsed onto the couch while I stepped onto the balcony, letting the view soak into me. The turquoise water stretched endlessly, waves lapping at the shore, and couples strolled along the sand hand in hand. It was a scene I had once imagined sharing with my wife, but now I realized I didn't want to share it with her. I wanted to experience it with someone who actually saw me, someone who chose to be there. That evening we decided to explore the beachside bar. There was no need for fancy clothes or careful appearances, just a loose linen shirt for me, a sundress for Lily, barefoot and carefree, the wind catching her hair. The world felt simple and immediate in a way it hadn't in a long time. We ordered drinks and laughed easily, the kind of laughter I hadn't realized I'd been missing. She teased me for sipping too slowly, I teased her for stealing fries off my plate. Around us, a local band began to play live music, filling the warm night air with a soft island rhythm. Then came a slow song, a mellow rendition of a classic tune. Lily leaned toward me with a mischievous grin. "Dance with me," she said. I blinked, momentarily stunned. "Here?" I asked. "Why not?" she replied, playful and unhesitant. "You brought me across the ocean. The least I can do is make sure you don't sit through another awkward silence on a romantic beach." I took her hand, and together we danced barefoot in the sand under the soft glow of string lights. The music seemed to move us like the tide itself, gentle yet inevitable. She leaned into me, not out of need or confusion, but with a natural ease, as if we had been orbiting the wrong stars for too long and had finally found the right alignment. As we swayed to the music under the lights, I began to see Lily in a way I never had before. She wasn't just my wife's sister anymore, she was her own person, strong, confident, real, and unafraid to be herself. Every laugh, every glance, every playful touch felt genuine. She wasn't measuring me or testing me. She was simply present. And for the first time in months, I felt present too. I wasn't holding my words, I wasn't walking on eggshells, and I wasn't trying to mend something that was already gone. With her, there was no pretense, no need to perform or prove myself. The night stretched on, and the connection between us grew quietly but unmistakably. In the glow of the lights, with the waves lapping softly at the shore behind us, I realized that what I had been searching for wasn't a revival of what I had lost. It was something entirely new, something alive. For the first time I felt seen. Not as someone's husband or a man struggling to fix a marriage, but as myself, worthy of attention, worthy of care, and for the first time in years, unbroken. Back in the suite, we settled in quietly. Lily flopped onto the couch while I moved to the balcony, letting the ocean breeze wash over me. The room was serene, a sharp contrast to the whirlwind of emotions from the day. We shared the bed that night, but nothing crossed the line. No rushed gestures, no awkward tension, just the comfort of being near someone who chose to be there. And yet, when she reached over and held my hand in the dark, it carried more meaning than anything my wife had done in over a year. That small touch told me everything: acceptance, presence, and an unspoken understanding. It wasn't about revenge or filling a void left by someone else. It was real, and it was ours. For the first time in a long while, I felt grounded, whole, and quietly alive. The betrayal still stung, but it no longer weighed me down. With Lily, I could finally breathe again. The next morning, I woke early and stepped out for a walk along the beach. The world was quiet, the waves lapping gently against the sand, and I needed a moment to think, to let the clarity of the previous night settle in. When I checked my phone, I saw 3 missed calls and a voicemail, all from my wife. I didn't open them. There was no need. Instead, I lifted my camera and captured a moment that felt like a turning point. Lily standing on the balcony, wearing my white shirt, her hair tousled from sleep, sipping coffee as the sun rose behind her. She hadn't noticed me. She was lost in her own peace, a stark contrast to the chaos my marriage had become. I sent the photo with one simple caption: "Thanks for the vacation, he's mine now." No explanation, no apology, just the truth, and in that moment I felt a weight lift. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself, and it felt like freedom. Minutes later, my phone buzzed again, but I let it sit in the sand. There was no urgency, no need to answer. Because here's the thing, when someone makes you feel like you're never enough, you start shrinking to fit the space they leave for you. You bend, compromise, hope, and often end up losing yourself. With Lily, none of that was necessary. I didn't have to shrink, didn't have to chase, didn't have to beg for attention or affection. I could simply be myself, and that was enough. The next 2 days were spent doing everything I had originally planned for my wife: massage, hikes, snorkeling, the works. But this time, everything felt different. I realized that love isn't about fighting to keep someone who doesn't want to stay. It's about being with someone who chooses you freely, without hesitation, without conditions. And for the first time in years, I felt what that truly meant. By the third night, everything shifted. Lily leaned toward me and kissed me, not out of guilt, not as a challenge, not to make anyone jealous, but simply because it felt right. When I kissed her back, it didn't feel like revenge. It didn't carry anger, spite, or proof. It felt like a beginning. A genuine connection, one that had grown quietly, patiently, and honestly over the past days. Later, lying side by side on the beach, listening to the gentle crash of waves and each other's breathing, she whispered, "Do you think she knows what she lost?" I looked up at the stars and let myself smile. "I don't care," I said, "because now I know what I found." For the first time in years, I wasn't clinging to the past. I was stepping into something new, something real, and I finally felt light. 2 days after I sent that photo of Lily on the balcony, my phone lit up like a storm. Dozens of messages, missed calls, and voice notes poured in. Most were from my wife, Emily, but a few came from mutual friends, some pretending to check in, others clearly trying to stir drama. I ignored them all. I didn't owe her a response, not anymore. My curiosity as a human being tempted me, though, and that evening, while Lily was in the shower and Maui's sunset cast a golden glow across the room, I opened one of Emily's messages. "Jake, what the hell is wrong with you? That's my sister. You think this is funny? You think this makes you the good guy?" I didn't reply, not to the first nor the ones that followed. Then came another. "Emily, so this is who you really are. Guess I never knew you at all." I laughed quietly to myself. After everything I had done to try to save our marriage, she had the audacity to accuse me. No remorse, no apology, only deflection and blame. When Lily emerged from the shower, wrapped in a towel with water dripping from her hair, I set the phone face down. "Let me guess," she said, drying her face, "she saw the photo." "She's furious," I replied, and we both knew it was true. Lily looked at me seriously. "I don't want to be your weapon, Jake. If that's what this is, tell me now." "You're not," I said firmly. "You never were. What's happening here, this us? It feels like the first honest thing I've had in years." Her gaze lingered on mine, searching for truth, and for the first time I realized I had found it with her. I told Lily everything, every silent argument, every cold shoulder, every moment Emily had become someone I barely recognized. I explained how she had grown more interested in flirtation and validation than in the man she married. I laid it all out, raw and unfiltered, without bitterness, without blame, just honesty. Lily listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging, never gloating, just understanding. That alone felt revolutionary. Later, we went down to the pool bar, but the atmosphere was different this time. It wasn't carefree like the first night. It was real, weighty. It was the kind of truth that shifts the air between two people. Lily reached across the table and asked a question I hadn't anticipated. "Do you think you ever really loved her?" I didn't answer immediately. I stared past her toward the glowing pool, laughing couples, and distant waves. Then I said, "I loved the version of her I met, the one who looked at me like I mattered. The one who danced with me in the kitchen, fell asleep in my lap during movies. Somewhere along the way, she stopped being that person, and I spent too long hoping she'd come back." Lily nodded slowly, understanding perfectly. "That's how I feel about half my family," she said with a quiet laugh, and in that moment a weight lifted. The air cleared, and the first real peace in years settled over me. Later that night, we walked along the beach under the silver glow of the moon. The tide had pulled back, revealing smooth stretches of sand, glistening shells, and scattered rocks. Lily reached for my hand without hesitation, and it felt completely natural, easy, unforced. "I used to think you were too perfect," she said softly. I raised an eyebrow. "Me, you mean the perfect husband your sister had?" She laughed, "The one who cooked too much, sent flowers to her office, planned surprise dates. I always wondered how you had the energy." I stopped walking and met her gaze. You want the truth? I asked. Always, she replied. I didn't have the energy. I had hope that if I tried hard enough I could get the real her back. But people don't always return to who they were, they change. Sometimes they leave you long before they actually go. She looked at me with something I couldn't read fully, a mix of sadness and admiration. You deserve someone who doesn't make you fight for every ounce of love, she said. I didn't answer, instead I kissed her. It wasn't planned, strategic, or meant to prove anything. It just happened, and under the moonlight everything else, betrayal, guilt, the noise of the past, vanished. For the first time I felt truly present, fully alive and free. We didn't rush back to the hotel. Instead we stayed on the beach, lying side by side, staring up at the stars. I began to share things I'd never told anyone, dreams I'd held before marriage, small ambitions I'd tucked away. I spoke of a cabin in the mountains I had always wanted to build, a dog I'd never gotten because Emily wasn't a pet person, and the novels I had started writing but never finished. Lily listened intently, as if each word mattered, as if discovering me was a privilege rather than a chore. For the first time I felt like someone truly wanted to know me, not the man stuck in a failing marriage, not someone trying to fix a broken love, but me, Jake, the one with dreams, flaws, and a heart still capable of hope. Later, back at the hotel, I captured a photo of Lily on the balcony, overlooking the sea, wind in her hair, arms wrapped around me. I didn't post it for anyone to see. It wasn't for Emily. It was just for me, a reminder that I had found someone who made me feel alive again. That evening, when we returned to the resort, there was an envelope waiting at the front desk. No postage, no name, just my handwriting scribbled across it, Jake. I opened it on the balcony while Lily was in the shower. Inside was a letter from Emily, 2 pages long. The first half was venomous, full of accusations. She called me cold, immature, claimed I humiliated her in front of friends and family, and said Lily was using me to win some imaginary sibling rivalry. She insisted I had betrayed her trust and broken every vow we had made. But as I read on, cracks began to appear in her anger. She admitted she missed me, that she hadn't expected me to move on so quickly. She wondered if she'd made a mistake, confessed that she was scared, and even said she hoped I might come back because she was ready to talk. I folded the letter carefully, set it aside, and then tore it into tiny pieces, letting them fall into the waste bin. Not out of spite or anger, but out of clarity. I wasn't going back. I had found something real, and there was no room for the past to pull me backward. When Lily came out, wrapped in a towel, we sat on the balcony together, watching the stars blink awake over the ocean. She rested her head on my shoulder and murmured, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said softly, "I finally buried the ghost." And in that moment, for the first time in years, peace settled over me. The next morning I booked separate flights for us, Lily back to her apartment and me to our hometown. It wasn't about creating distance, it was about closing old chapters and tying up loose ends. For her, it was family. For me, it was a divorce I had been avoiding for far too long. Before she left, she hugged me tighter than I expected and whispered, "Don't let her talk you in circles." "You already found the truth," I replied. "I won't," she said. The truth was simple. Emily had lost me the moment she thought I'd remain broken. 3 weeks later, the papers were signed. Emily tried to call one last time, but I let it ring. There was nothing left to say. Afterward, Lily and I started slowly. Long calls, weekend visits, no rush, no pressure, just honesty and presence. When we met again in the mountains, I brought a small gold ring. Not a proposal, not yet, but a promise. A promise that this time everything would be different, built on truth, patience, and without ghosts. And she said yes. For the woman who skipped a flight, thinking I'd wait at the gate, thank you. You helped me find the best version of myself, the one you never saw. Thank you for walking away, because the empty seat beside me gave someone better the chance to sit there, not just on a plane, but in life. If you've ever felt broken, abandoned, or uncertain if you were ever enough, let this be your answer. You were, you are, you just need someone who truly sees it. With Lily, life felt simple and real. We spent our days exploring, laughing, and discovering the island together. Scooters carried us to hidden beaches, where we swam until we were breathless and ate the freshest fish tacos I'd ever tasted. We didn't talk about Emily, not because it didn't matter, but because some lessons are best learned through living, not reliving. The best kind of healing isn't revenge, it's freedom. I wasn't angry, bitter, or trying to prove a point. I was alive, whole, and finally present. Each day with Lily reminded me that love doesn't require begging, negotiating, or shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. Love is being chosen freely and being seen without apology. By nightfall, the phone rang again, missed calls, texts, messages from Emily and her family, but I didn't respond. For the first time, I realized that her chaos no longer controlled me. Lily hummed softly as she flipped through photos, a gentle presence beside me. The wind carried peace instead of tension. I handed her a glass of wine and she gave me that familiar, teasing grin. Still ignoring her, she asked. "What's left to say?" I replied. "Some people don't want closure, they want control." She leaned closer, voice low. "And who were you before all this?" I watched the waves and the couples laughing nearby, then said, "A man who knew how to fight for something, but only if it was worth the damn bruises." And in that moment, I knew this was the start of something real. Something built not from obligation or habit, but from truth, choice, and presence. That night, we skipped the resort dinner and opted for street food from a small beachside shack. Barefoot in the sand. Elbows brushing, we ate simply, laughing easily, letting the night unfold without expectation. We didn't discuss what this meant for the future or whether it would last. We let it just be. It was real, unfiltered, and wholly ours. For the first time in years, I felt recognized, not as someone else's husband, not as a man wounded by betrayal, but as myself. Jake, the man who once dreamed of a cabin in the mountains, who cooked too much pasta, who hadn't been truly kissed in over a year. Around midnight, tangled together under the hotel sheets, Lily whispered, "She doesn't know what she gave up." I kissed her shoulder softly. She never tried to find out and I didn't mind. By morning, the narrative had shifted. I wasn't broken. I wasn't waiting. I was present, alive, and free. The past was behind me. Ahead was clarity, presence, and someone who chose me, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And that made all the difference. By morning, Emily's absence of silence turned into chaos. My phone buzzed relentlessly, dozens of missed calls, voicemails, and texts. Her mother and even her father, who had never once reached out before, were suddenly involved. It was clear, Emily was unraveling. But I had never felt more composed. Lily sat nearby, humming softly, flipping through photos on her phone. My shirt draped over her shoulders, the breeze from the open balcony carrying a sweetness I hadn't known in years, peace, presence, clarity. I handed her a glass of wine. She gave me that half-flirty, half-curious grin I'd come to recognize. "Still ghosting her?" she asked, nodding toward my buzzing phone. "What's left to say?" I replied. "Some people don't want closure, they want control." Lily leaned closer. "And who were you before all this?" I looked out at the waves, at laughing couples in the pool below, then said, "A man who knew how to fight for something, but only if it was worth the bruises." That night, the past no longer had power over me. Emily could rage, plead, or accuse all she wanted. I had moved on, not out of anger, but out of clarity and self-respect. And with Lily, I finally felt whole again. That night, we let go of plans and formalities. Instead of another fancy resort dinner, we grabbed food from a small shack by the beach. Barefoot, sandy, laughing as we ate, our elbows brushed, and every glance between us felt effortless. We didn't talk about what might happen later or whether this would last. We simply existed in the moment. It was raw, honest, and fully alive. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as someone else's husband, not as a man shaped by disappointment, but as myself. Jake, the man who dreamed of a cabin in the mountains, who cooked too much pasta, who hadn't felt truly kissed in over a year. Around midnight, tangled together under the sheets, Lily whispered, "She doesn't know what she gave up." I kissed her shoulder softly. She never tried to find out and I didn't mind. By morning, the past had no grip on me. I wasn't broken, I wasn't waiting. I was present, alive, and free. With Lily beside me, I finally understood what it meant to be chosen, to be appreciated, and to be fully myself without apology. And that feeling was everything. The following morning, the chaos from Emily intensified. My phone lit up with a flurry of missed calls, texts, and voicemails from her friends, even her parents who had never reached out before. It was obvious she was unraveling. But I felt steady, composed, and completely at peace. Lily sat nearby, humming softly as she scrolled through photos on her phone, my shirt draped over her shoulders. The breeze carried a quiet sweetness, a calm I hadn't known in years, clarity, presence, and freedom. I handed her a glass of wine. She gave me that familiar sideways grin. Still ignoring her, she asked, nodding toward the phone. "What's left to say?" I replied. Some people don't want closure, they want control. Lily leaned closer, voice soft. And who were you before all this? I watched the waves crash, listened to couples laughing in the distance, then answered, a man who knew how to fight for something, but only if it was worth the bruises. That night I realized the past no longer held any power. Emily could scream, plead, or try to manipulate as she wished. I had moved on, not with anger but with clarity. With Lily I had found presence, honesty, and someone who truly chose me, and that made all the difference. From that night on, Lily and I embraced the freedom we had found together. We spent our days exploring, laughing, and living fully in the present. Scooters carried us to hidden beaches where we swam until we were breathless and savored the best fish tacos I had ever tasted. There was no talk of Emily, no need. Sometimes the best healing comes not from revenge, but from choosing life, joy, and presence over the past. I wasn't angry, bitter, or trying to prove anything. I was alive, fully seen, and completely accepted for who I was. Every day with Lily reminded me that love doesn't require begging or shrinking. It's about being chosen freely, without conditions, and being recognized for your true self. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I watched her, content and carefree, and realized this wasn't a rebound, a fluke, or a consolation. It was real. It was ours. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere, fully, completely, and without compromise. Over the next days, our rhythm settled into something effortless. We explored the island without schedules, discovered secret beaches, swam until our limbs ached, and laughed until our voices grew hoarse. We didn't speak of Emily, not because she didn't matter, but because this was about reclaiming what had been lost, me fully alive and finally free. Every moment with Lily reminded me that love isn't about pleading for attention or trying to earn affection. It's about being seen, chosen, and valued for who you truly are. And with her, I didn't have to shrink, hide, or perform. I could simply exist as myself, and that was enough. By the evening, I realized the past had no weight over me. Emily could rage, plead, or manipulate all she wanted. I had moved forward, not with vengeance, but with clarity and peace. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened, and the person beside me wasn't just company. She was a mirror of the life I had been missing, alive and whole. That night, we let go of formalities completely. Instead of another fancy resort dinner, we grabbed food from a small shack by the beach. Barefoot, sandy, elbows brushing, we laughed freely, letting the night unfold without expectations. We didn't discuss the future or whether this would last, we simply let it exist. It was raw, unfiltered, and entirely alive. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as someone else's husband, not as a man wounded by betrayal, but as myself. Jake, the man who dreamed of a cabin in the mountains, who cooked too much pasta, who hadn't been truly kissed in over a year. Around midnight, tangled together under the hotel sheets, Lily whispered softly, "She doesn't know what she gave up." I kissed her shoulder, she didn't need to know. By morning, the past had lost all its hold on me. I wasn't broken, I wasn't waiting, I was present, alive, and free. For the first time, I understood what it meant to be with someone who truly chose you, without condition or compromise. And that freedom felt like everything. The following morning, Emily's attempts to reclaim control intensified. My phone buzzed incessantly, missed calls, texts, voicemails from her friends, even her parents who had rarely reached out before. It was clear she was unraveling. But I felt steady, calm, and at peace for the first time in years. Lily sat nearby, flipping through photos on her phone, my shirt draped over her shoulders. The breeze carried a quiet sweetness, peace, clarity, and presence, things I hadn't felt in a long time. I handed her a glass of wine. She gave me that familiar, teasing grin. Still ignoring her, she asked, nodding toward the buzzing phone. "What's left to say?" I replied. "Some people don't want closure, they want control." She leaned closer, voice soft. "And who were you before all this?" I watched the waves, listened to laughter from nearby couples, and said, "A man who knew how to fight for something, but only if it was worth the bruises." That day I realized the past no longer held any power. Emily's anger, her pleas, her accusations, they didn't matter. I had moved on with clarity, presence, and someone who truly chose me. And for the first time in years, I felt entirely free. After that, Lily and I began taking things slowly. Long phone calls, weekend visits, no pressure, no rush, just honesty and presence. Every moment together felt deliberate, real, and unhurried. When we met again for a weekend in the mountains, I brought a small gold ring, not a proposal, not yet, but a promise. A symbol that this time everything would be different, that we would build something new, grounded in truth, patience, and freedom from the ghosts of the past. She smiled when I showed it to her and said yes, not because of obligation, but because she wanted to. For the woman who skipped a flight and assumed I would wait at the gate, thank you. Your choice to walk away gave me the chance to find someone who truly sees me. That empty seat became more than a place on a plane. It became an opening for someone better to share life with me. If you've ever been left broken or unsure of your worth, know this. You were enough then, you are enough now, and sometimes it just takes the right person to see it.